Watching News at Prime, let's bring you the latest on this now. Israel's military says Iranian missiles have struck central Israel as it confirms carrying out a strike in Tehran, targeting a senior Iranian commander. The Israeli Defense Forces also saying troops have seized areas in southern Lebanon, marking a significant escalation in the conflict in the Iran-backed or with the Iran-backed Hezbollah militia. Now, Hezbollah, in turn, claims it has launched attack drones into Israel. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has signaled that the assault on Iran could continue for weeks, raising fears of a prolonged and widening regional war. Let's get some perspective now. Newzroom Afrika's Conita Hunter keeping tabs on that war. Conita, good afternoon to you. We'll talk about the latest, what is going on right now in Iran, but interesting that we're bringing in Hezbollah in this because Lebanon also becomes part of the conversation. I was just monitoring the international wires, and for a while, Israel has been saying that they actually are now going to have troops on the ground in Lebanon, and it does appear that that is what effectively is happening.
Absolutely, and so again, that creep to a regional war. Now, let's just take you back to what's been happening today in Iran. We understand that an office of the Assembly of Experts, this clerical body that's meant to appoint Iran's next supreme leader, was bombed in the city of Qom today. And this strike occurred, after the group's compound in Tehran was bombed, and there's been several bombing attacks in Tehran reported. So the US and Israel persisting on their attacks in Iran. At the same time, the retaliatory missiles and attacks from Iran has intensified throughout today. We don't have an updated death toll, but we know that there has been attacks all over the Gulf region, where we saw attacks on Riyadh, the US embassy saying that attacks in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia were quite imminent. We had updates from Qatar. We just heard from their foreign minister talking about Iranian jets flying into their airspace and they had to shoot them down. So a definite intensification of this conflict. But before we get drawn into the politics, Goli, you have to understand that there are lives that have been lost. And the most tragic of it was the death of those school children, who 168 of them that were killed on Saturday on an attack on a school in Menab, a girls' school there. The United Nations has come out and said that it's a grave violation of humanitarian law. Let's take a listen to what the Office of the Human Rights Office spokesperson had to say.
In Iran, the Iran Red Crescent Society reports put the death toll at 787. In the single deadliest and devastating incident, dozens of girls were reportedly killed and injured when their primary school in Menab, in the south of the country, was struck during the school day. The High Commissioner calls for a prompt, impartial, and thorough investigation into the circumstances of the attack. The onus is on the forces that carried out the attack to investigate it. We call on them to make public the findings and to ensure accountability and redress for the victims.
Sure, Conita, that's toll. That is likely to escalate given the hostilities that continue to intensify. Let's continue with the theme of the school children because, as you said, their death comes as a direct result of the US, which now we're intervening on behalf of Israel. And so essentially these children arguably were killed by US strikes. And this is what President Trump, in part, is going to have to explain to US Congress when he does address that particular house, because his foreign secretary has already briefed apparently the top tier of a group of congressmen. I think they called a group of eight. Yes. And so it's now going to be President Trump's turn to not only justify why the US is involved in this war, but how could US military strikes target ordinary civilians, needless to say children.
Absolutely. And so when Trump goes to Congress, it will be later this evening for us, but early in the US, so tonight, we will keep tabs on that explanation. But let's go back to what Marco Rubio said after he briefed Congress yesterday. And he said that he let it slip that Israel was going to attack Iran anyways, and that American interest would have been caught as collateral damage, and that's why the US had to join Israel in these strikes, in these preemptive strikes. Let's recall, there's no such thing in international law called preemptive strikes. At the same time, the Congress in the US was not briefed, so many there are saying that it's illegal under American law. And we heard from US Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer saying the conflict with Iran is Trump's war. So they're personalizing it to say, don't take the rest of the US with us. Because let's remember that according to polls, support for American forces to get involved in Iran was very, very low. At the same time, there is dipping sentiments towards Israel, as many Americans are saying that Israel is holding the US at ransom. And so the US Israel forced the US into this war and now has to deal with the consequences. The fact that you had Britain saying, we're not going to join, and other allies, maybe celebrating the fact that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had died, but looking at this, now it's expanding to be a regional war with absolute horror. The question now is, how does Trump mop this up, given the fact that his partners and allies in the Gulf, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, are looking to him and saying, this can't continue for much longer?
Yeah, and let's remember that when an American president is going to go into a war with any country for that matter, he's going to say he's doing that in the name of the American people. And so where does that justification come in?
And more importantly, the fact that you have 6 American servicemen who have been killed in Kuwait, and more details emerging about how unprepared they were in Kuwait, that they were in ordinary civilian infrastructure, and that how did Iran have that intelligence to attack that base in Kuwait? And Kuwait said very, very clearly that they must not use their base there for any of their attacks for Iran. And so again now, is America at war with Iran is the million-dollar question. Because if it is, it's a violation of international law and a violation of domestic law in the US. And Trump, for the longest time, had said, we're not at war with Iran. We are attacking their nuclear program. We are curtailing their missile program.
Which nuclear program, by the way, he claimed to have decimated last year, June.
Absolutely. And remember, so it's been a shifting needle every time, pressure is mounted on Trump and his inner circle. It keeps moving from what he had to say versus what Pete Hegseth had to say versus Marco Rubio. So now when he goes to Congress this evening and he's grilled in front of Congress, it will be interesting to what he sticks to. And particularly, the characterization of this conflict is important to how long it lasts. Is the US in for the long haul? And if so, are they prepared for that? And if they're not, is this going to be some sort of war of attrition where no one knows what's going to happen next? And it plunges the entire region into conflict.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting politics, particularly in America. It's a very serious situation because ordinary lives are being lost, not only in Iran, but the entire region now is engulfed. And the midterm review is upon us. All right. Kanita Hunter, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to speed about what's happening in the Middle East.